why is it even going live. There we go. Now we're live. Premed office hours for March 5th, 2025. It is crazy. It is March. The cycle is April, May. 2 months away already. Can you believe that, Scott Wright?
It's crazy.
Time flies.
It's so crazy. Yeah, I can't believe it's March. Yeah.
It is ridiculous. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray. If you don't know who I am, where have you been? I'm the founder of Medical School Headquarters Mapped, author of the Premed Playbook series, host of the Premed Years podcast. We are rebooting the MCAT podcast as well pretty soon. We may have a special guest coming on here in a little bit to talk all things MCAT. We'll see. But I am joined by the one, the only Reverend Dr. James Scott Wright. Do you think you're the only Reverend in medical school admissions advising?
I have no idea. Probably not.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if you were. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, it would be cool.
Former director of admissions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Former director of admissions at UT Southwestern, retired executive director at TMDSAS. What were we going to say?
I was going to say maybe at a Catholic school, there might be a priest who is a professor who is also the pre-med advisor. So that's plausible.
That's plausible. Yeah. It is plausible. Definitely. Yeah. Also joining today, the one, the only, Carlos Tapia, former director of student affairs at Icon School of Medicine, former director of admissions at TCU. How you doing, Carlos?
Good. Not a reverend?
Not a reverend. Not yet. Never say never.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Go to whatever that school is at 80 years old, like Scott did.
I know, right? I was 83, thank you.
Oh, wow.
Plus or minus. Well, we are here. We're excited to answer some questions. As always, we love having fun. It is the bro crew today. So we are here to answer the questions. If you are new here, we answer your questions every single week, almost every week at Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. So come hang out with us. Come ask your questions. And more importantly, tell all your friends to come learn with you all. Yeah. Sarah asks, my professor moved to another school. In AMCAT, should I write their current title or one they held when I was in their class? Interesting. Dr. Scott Wright, what do you think? Because the school doesn't really go in the letter of recommendation. It's just the title of the letter writer typically.
Mm-hmm.
I would think it's their current title. It's who they are.
That's what I would say.
Yeah,
because if they were
someone.
Yeah, if they were an assistant professor when you had them in class and they moved to a school and became an associate or a full professor, I wouldn't want to, like you just said, I wouldn't want to demote them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say current.
Yep. Go current. Any objection to that, Carlos?
Nope.
No. Yeah. Brandon, hello. We are live. Yeah. What's up, Brandon? Tino. Hello. I hope you are all doing well today. Sending you tons of positive vibes. Love the vibe today. Love the vibe. Any tips for scheduled spaced repetition after the content phase of MCAT prep? Feeling like there's a lot of content and I don't know how to get organized to study it. Well, unfortunately, that's kind of an MCAT question. We're not the study MCAT people, but we soon will have people to answer that question for you, Gracie. Carlos, Scott, do you have any thoughts here? There's just a lot.
Yeah.
Again, we may have a special guest joining. Let me see if he wrote back yet. He did not, so he may join us. We'll see.
Pop up.
All right. Shahar says, hey guys, thanks for taking the time to help us today. You are welcome. All right. Isron on Instagram says post-rejection stress. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Right. When I went through my first application cycle, I didn't get in. I had 2 interviews, was rejected from both. And it's kind of crushing, right? You pour your heart and your soul into this process. You empty your bank account, thanks to the AAMC and others. And you come out on the other end beaten, battered, and demoralized. And I don't think we talk about the emotional aspect of rejection enough. It's like, okay, well, I'll figure out what I need to do to fix my application, but like, how are you feeling? Right. And I felt horrible after my first application cycle, basically being told, or at least what I was internalizing in the message that I thought I was hearing was, you can't be a doctor, right? You're not good enough to be a doctor. Go figure something else out. And that's really not what they're saying, right, Carlos? They're trying to say, hey, there's something wrong with your application right now.
Yeah, you have to try again. I think there is a point in time where maybe this is just not the path for you, right? But you shouldn't just give up after one try. I know that the stress is sort of weighing on you, not getting an acceptance somewhere, but it can be just a matter of, tweaking your personal statement, maybe adding additional experiences. Maybe it was your interview that you just were not prepared for, and that was really what was the I would say, the turn off of not inviting them to join their class. And so you have to assess every step of the way to really determine where you were at. If you got invited to interviews and you went through the full process, then maybe it was that interview, right? But just dealing with it, I know you can sit with the emotions, process it, and then regroup, strategize, plan again. What do you need to do next so you can move forward in this process?
Yeah. Keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Sarah, my class is in the anthropology department, but the course content is actually biology. Which category should I put it under when filling out AMCAS? Scott, this is kind of the art and science of the application. It really is the course content and not necessarily how it's classified from a section label, right?
Right. That's right. It's right.
So,
Well,
biology.
yeah, at TMDSAS, I used to do a lot of these reviews of appeals. We would go in and make a correction, or we would say to a student, this class doesn't count, and the student would appeal that and submit documentation to want to have a class count for something or whatever. And so I'd review a lot of those appeals, and looking at the course content. We would look at if they have a syllabus, if the professor would write a letter saying the content is largely biology, whatever. But you're exactly right. It's all about the content.
Yeah. It's just one of my biggest frustrations with AMCAS and ACOMAS. TMDSAS does a really good job about just being very transparent. Here's our school list. Here are the courses that we have adjudicated at this point as biochemistry, as biology, as chemistry for the prereqs based on your school. And then, yes, there are changes and there are new courses that are added, and you all do those evaluations as needed. AMCAS has way more data points than TMDSAS because they just get so many more applications.
Right.
Like, make that database public. Like, you adjudicate these courses every single year in and year out. Put a list out that says, hey, Anthro 102 is a biology course. Right. So that, number one, the student doesn't get stressed, and number two, it reduces the workload on AMCAS. Right. Why wouldn't they want to do that? I just don't understand it.
Yeah. It's a power play, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's a power play. It's potentially a justification for the verification process and why they charge so much. It's all of that. Yep. Yeah. Shame.
That's right.
So we should just walk around. I'm gonna get yelled at by the AAMC. I gotta be kind.
Play
Not the
nice.
people. It's not the people at AAMC. It's just the overall. Anyway, Tino, would 500 total clinical and volunteering clinical hours go in the same category? And should the hours I do in my gap year be included in my application? Ooh, I like this, Carlos. It's such a common issue that we see kind of day in and day out, where we look at an application. A student says, hey, I didn't get into med school. We look at their application and everything stops basically the month that they apply to medical school. And it doesn't look like they're doing anything throughout the application cycle. It's like, why didn't you put anything down? And then I'll talk to the student. They're like, oh, I was looking for jobs to be a medical assistant or to be a scribe or whatever. I just didn't have anything solid yet, so I didn't put it in. I'm like, no, you need to put it in. It doesn't have to be an exact position yet, but what you're anticipating doing is a big part of that. Carlos, for this, 500 total clinical and volunteer clinical. I'm on a mission to get people to just stop using this volunteer word. It's either clinical experience or non-clinical. And then the clinical is either paid or volunteer. We can work through that later. What advice do you have here for Tino? I'll shut up.
Yeah, it depends, right? Like I think you just mentioned it. There's paid clinical and then there's paid non-clinical, and you have to make that determination where those hours split and separate. We can't tell you put it all here or put it all there. It's based on the experience. But I think you're right? Whatever you're going to do in the gap year should be anticipated as you're going to begin at some time in the future. You mentioned a good point, though, that there's people that are going to wait until the end of their senior year, graduate, to look for things to do during their gap year. And I always say planning ahead is better, because at least you know what you're going to do. It gives admissions committees an insight of what sort of your plan is after graduation. But again, everybody works differently and everybody manages things, their timeline differently. But I would always encourage plan ahead, think ahead, especially if you're going to do a gap year. My advice to all the pre-health students that I work with, and they're like, I'm going to take a gap year, I'm going to do something. It's like, what are you going to do with that gap year, right? Let's start talking about that now, so you plan ahead. And it's not, oh, well, I'm going to wait until May. I'm going to graduate, finish college, go on a vacation, then come back and figure out what I'm going to do. Again, it's just planning ahead.
Yeah. Plan ahead and communicate, right? Because that application is just the only snapshot really that you have to give to an admissions committee. And if it looks like you're doing nothing, they're going to assume you're doing nothing. They're not going to call and be like, hey, Johnny, I see on your application you didn't put any activities down. I just want to make sure you're doing nothing. Like, they're not going to call you. Yeah. And I will never get tired of using the old phone thumb and pinky, and not the new way kids do phones of just a flat hand. Michelle, hello. I've read some secondaries need your CV. Is there a preferred template? There are so many options. Does it matter? Do you recommend adding LinkedIn to your CV? Yeah, there are a couple schools that want a CV. Just provide them a professional one. I wouldn't overthink it. And yeah, go ahead and put LinkedIn on there. Why not?
Sure.
Jay Lovax. I was reading that as like Lovanox, which is a blood thinner. But then I was like, oh, that's love. XOXO hope. Jay from Canada. I am a student from Canada, potentially looking to apply to the States. Why would you want to come to this crazy place?
Oh my gosh, really?
Wondering what you'd suggest if I'm unhappy with my 3.4 cumulative GPA and an MCAT below 510. Overall cumulative GPA trend was upwards, however. Jay, at the end of the day, you can retake your MCAT and you can take more courses. That's really the option if you're not happy with your GPA. But if you have an upward trend, how far is that upward trend? Is it 20 credits, 30 credits, 40 credits, whatever it is? So lots more questions there for you, Jay.
Yeah.
Brandon, I just got a research position at UC Davis, Neuro, no wet lab, but my research mentor will be an assistant professor. Should I go ahead with this or pick one with a full professor at my own university for an LOR? Scott, before they even have the job, they're worried about the LOR. This is a common, I understand the stress and the anxiety of this process. Should the student care about the LOR at this point, or should they care about the position and where they're more interested in going?
Right. Absolutely. 100% on the second. Yes, that's right. Don't cross bridges before you come to them. You're mentally crossing a bridge that's miles and miles ahead. And if you do that too often, it will drive you absolutely nuts. So Brandon, just calm down. I don't think it's going to matter that much whether he or she is a assistant professor or a full professor or whatever. I think it depends a lot on how you how they talk about you and their experience with you. If they're a PI at UC Davis, then that's pretty, that's going to be noticeable. So, yeah.
Yep. Oh, all right. Good questions this morning. Keep them coming over from Instagram. 9:09. Would applying this cycle on June 15th be too late? I wouldn't be verified by the first day applications are sent to schools. June 15th is perfect. Not a problem. Our general recommendation is apply by June, not by the end of June. Apply in June at some point. This whole verification prior to the first kind of wave of applications being available is just it's lore. Like, don't worry about that. I kind of went off on someone on TikTok. There's been a student that unfortunately, like, I love when students are out there making content, having fun, doing their thing. But when it's information that we have to turn around and say, no, that's not right, it's super frustrating. So I've been very active, like, commenting on this person's TikTok going, that's not right. Sorry, fact checking here, right? That they mentioned there's a few DO schools that require a DO letter of recommendation. I'm like, nope, that, like, as of 2 or 3 years ago, like, that's not the case anymore. No DO schools require a DO letter anymore. And they mentioned you can submit your DO application mid-May versus AMCAT. You have to wait a little bit. I'm like, nope, you can submit it immediately now as of, again, a year or two ago. But one of the comments was, you need to submit your application first day. And I'm like, stop stressing students out with this first day crap. It's baloney. Knock it off.
Yeah. Baloney's the good word for it.
It's baloney. I've stronger words, but then we'd have to bleep and make this R-rated and
TVMA.
You log into YouTube, be like, this is for adult content only. What's Dr. Gray doing?
Turn your safe search off.
Oh, man. Mitch. Hey, guys. I've been following med school headquarters since 2020 and have 2 interviews coming up. Any tips for virtual closed file and partially blind interviews? Thanks again for everything. I have a book called The Premed Playbook, Guide to the Medical School Interview. I would start there. If you can, Mitch, swing a mock interview with someone on our team, that would be fantastic. You can use that promo code that's hiding under your comment, PMOH, to save a little bit of money there. Other than that, Carlos, you got a great piece of feedback from a student that you helped with some mock interviews that got into Rush, I think it was, right?
Correct.
What is your number one tip for interviews?
Be yourself.
Yeah.
You got invited to an interview because there was something in your application that caught the attention of the admissions committee. just be yourself. There's nothing that you need to go in with trying to sell yourself, trying to be somebody you're not, trying to prove that you're this super smart person, trying to be that person that you're ready for medicine because you have all this clinical work. Be yourself. Answer questions from the knowledge that you have, your personal experiences, and you'll have a better time in the interview than I think trying to be something that you're not, because that creates high anxiety, high stress, trying to pretend you're this polished individual that, again, knows everything, super smart, right? Be yourself. Be professional, but be yourself.
Yeah, professional I think is good, but professional doesn't mean also then turn around and again be someone, be more hyperbolic and braggadocious in your language.
Yeah. And I say be professional because I had an experience when it was way back. This is when we were still doing in-person interviews. I don't know if I shared this before. And I guess this applicant was on this very high protein, like eating every 2 hours diet.
Sounds gassy.
Well, during the interview process, we did MMIs, and you were not allowed to have anything during the MMI.
Yeah.
This applicant pulls out, and this is 100% true, pulls out like half a sweet potato from his pocket and starts to eat as
This
he's
is
trying
in person?
Yes, this is when we were still doing in person. As we're doing MMI prep, going into sort of like the 2 minutes that you have to read the prompt. And so he's like literally foil. And as you can imagine, you can hear it. And he's trying to eat in these 2 minutes, eat the sweet potato. With nothing, just with like a cooked sweet potato before he went into the room. And we unfortunately had to tell him like he couldn't do that. Like we understood that
Sir,
he had this.
put the potato down.
It was one of those most awkward moments because you don't know if you're sort of crossing the line of, does this person have some sort of like dietary concern that he has to eat because maybe something's going to happen, or is this person just in a very strict, like, no, I'm eating every 2 hours because I'm bulky and I'm eating.
Yeah.
And so we just had to say, you can't do that. You can't bring, and it was the clinical education suite, so you're not allowed to have food in there anyway. So we were like,
please step away from the potato.
Yes. Or put it away back in your pocket, which was even more because he had been carrying it in his pocket for quite some time. I mean, MMI was 2 hours. So again, be professional, be you, but don't be you to where you pull a sweet potato out of your pocket. Be professional, still be you.
Man,
that's really funny.
Yeah. And I don't even know if that person got into med school, to be honest. Not with us for sure, because that was like a what is going on type situation.
Wow. Apparently sweet potatoes are part of the morning glory family. I didn't know that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that's a future orthopod right there. Be like, I gotta eat can't get in the way of my calories and my proteins.
Yeah. It was interesting to say the least.
That is fantastic. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. a sweet potato. Just raw dog and a sweet potato right there.
An aluminum foil out of a pocket. So, and again, right, in person, wearing a suit. And I remember this person in a blue suit. And the next thing you know, it's just,
how do you fit a sweet potato in your suit?
I have no idea. But
sure. Is that a sweet potato in your pocket?
And if he listens to this podcast, or if he catches this podcast, I hope that he takes away, like, I get it. You're doing what you need to do, but in that environment, be professional. Like,
so you accepted him right on the spot, right?
We didn't, unfortunately. I don't know if we got into any other program. Again, right? It's this. They're watching you. That's the thing, right?
Yep.
Like we were watching, and it was like we didn't report back to the committee, but we sort of told the story, and the committee was like, we don't even know what to do with this. Like, it's just interesting.
You load it up with some butter and some sour cream and some bacon bits. That's what you do.
I think I was just more impressed fitting it in his pant pocket, pulling it out. I was like, okay, I've seen everything now.
So many thoughts right now. I can't even go there.
Scott, knock it off.
So many thoughts.
But imagine like aluminum foil crinkling, like everything's so quiet because everybody's reading their prompt.
Yep.
And he's like over here, like eating. And it's like,
wow. All right. Off of the sweet potato debacle of 2020, or whenever that was.
2014.
Johnson, speaking of.
We're going to get.
Speaking of stuffing potatoes in pockets, what's up?
I can't.
Our non-clinical, I'll assume that's non-clinical volunteering hours or a leadership position required. Scott, this comes up a lot. We talk about non-clinical volunteering a lot lately.
Yes.
Talk about what is kind of generally considered community service.
Yeah, I think that medical schools want to see students that are involved in their community. Now, you can kind of, to some degree, you can define what your community is and work within the context of that. But I think in general, what they're looking for is you putting yourself into a context where it's not about you, it's about someone else. And this could be at a homeless shelter. It could be at the Ronald McDonald House. It could be, at a food bank, or it could be tutoring kids in elementary school, or reading to them, or helping new immigrants learn English. I mean, there's just so many ways that you can reach out and help in a community type volunteering capacity. I think those are definitely important. I would not say necessarily that they're required, but I definitely think that medical schools are going to really have that expectation that this is something they want their students to be about.
Yeah. I was talking to a dean of admissions friend recently, and her program requires, they expect 100 hours of community service at least on their applications. She was specifically mentioning another program that wants 150 hours. We're seeing more and more that community service is being bumped up there. So go explore. Swaggy B got accepted into a few SMP programs such as PCOM, BU, Duquesne, Case Western, etc. How helpful are programs like these for a less than 3.5 GPA, and how can I make the best decision on which one to do? I'm just proud of myself that I know that Duquesne is pronounced that way. If I only had to go off of how it's spelled, I would have butchered that. Carlos, for someone who's struggling a little bit academically, potentially, and it's hard, right? Because when someone says, hey, I have less than a 3.5 GPA, well, what does that mean? You could have a 3-point GPA with your last 40 credit hours being a 4.0, and we may go, maybe you don't need an SMP. For students that are getting ready to lay down $30,000-$40,000 for these SMP programs, any thoughts on how to make the best of them?
I mean, I think if you're talking about an academic enhancer, right, you're mentioning your concern about the academics, and I would say that's the first focus. Which of these is going to be more of an academic enhancer for you and for your application? If then that's sort of out of the way and you're still narrowing it down, you have to then decide which program best fits you. You want to be happy in that year or year and a half that you're going to do this. You don't want to be miserable. Just to show like, oh, I went to PCOM's program, right? Therefore, I'm going to apply to PCOM and I'm going to bank everything there. And again, that's just an example, but don't guide yourself by the name and the reputation, right, that you think the program has. Think about what you want out of this experience, because at the end of the day, if I was on the admissions committee side or even in the interview, right, I see that you went to a special master's program. What was your takeaway from it? Your takeaway is, I don't know, nothing. I just did it because I was an academic enhancer. It could go really bad for you. So again, if you're looking for an academic enhancer, determine based on that, and then pick the program that best fits you and where you're going to thrive, because that's going to benefit you in the long run. You're going to be able to talk about it from a very positive experience.
Yeah. Love it. All right. And it is PCOM. The school is very particular. They don't want to be called PCOM for some reason. I don't know why. Victoria, I got a score of 506 on my second MCAT from a 512 my first try because I had a personal/family death emergency. What advice do you have for me? I was originally going to apply the cycle, but I don't know now. Scott, you made a big face reading that or hearing that. Unfortunately, going down on the MCAT score is not great. Potentially, there are some schools out there that will look at your first score and go, yeah, you kind of bombed your one. Do you think Victoria should kind of reach out to schools she's interested in applying to? And
I would, I'd probably reach out to the schools and just kind of describe the situation and ask for their advice, and just see what they have to say. I mean, I made a face because it's so unfortunate. It particularly if there was some sort of emotional event or whatever that kind of intervened and that kind of affected her in that way. Victoria, I'm really sorry about that. I hope everything's okay. But I would just reach out to the schools that you're really interested in and see what they think.
Yeah.
What advice they would give.
So potentially hold out hope on applying this cycle. My first question, Victoria, is why were you retaking a 512?
Right.
What was your goal? I needed a 515. A 515 and a 512 are basically the same score. So I that would be my first question of judgment, is why retake the 512. But yeah, reach out to schools. There are some schools that will look at your highest score, not necessarily your newest score.
Right.
So you may be in luck there. Foladi. When do medical schools typically get their first applications? So I'll take this one. The crazy part about this process, right, is there's 3 different application services. AMCAS, which is the biggest, the DO application, COMIS, and then TMDSAS, which was the first. I just got to make sure everyone knows they were the first application service.
Yes.
So
thank you very much.
TMDSAS, they all do it a little bit different, right? So TMDSAS does not go through a long verification process like AMCAS does in terms of verifying grades versus transcripts. In fact, TMDSAS doesn't want your transcripts until they ask for your transcripts. I think it's a very smart move. It's like, hey, if you're accepted to medical school, we're going to want your transcripts. We'll verify after. We're going to assume you're telling the truth. And if you aren't, you're screwed, my friend. I think that's brilliant, right? I don't know why the other services don't do that. Again, they want to uphold their reasons for charging so much money. So TMDSAS, you can submit your applications kind of that mid-May timeframe. There is a small delay between when it opens and when you can submit. There's a couple weeks, maybe. There's a lot of residency verification is a big part of that initial process, right? And then schools have access to it. For the DO application, students can submit immediately. And as of, I think, 2 years ago now, there's 0 delay between when a school has access to your application. So DO schools, you can immediately get secondaries. So you really need to be prepared for that process. And in fact, it's a little sketchy that while you're filling out your application, the DO schools know that you have selected their program. So that's a little bit weird. They don't get to see what you're writing in real time, but they know, hey, Johnny from Texas is applying to Incarnate Word or whatever. So be prepared for the DO application to go much faster. And in fact, it's a strategy to maybe not submit your DO application immediately so that you just have a little bit of a break there. And then AMCAS is the longest one, where it opens early May. You can't submit until end of May. We historically have always said June 1st. The last many years now, it's been end of May sometime. And then still AMCAS has kind of a period where applications are being verified and schools don't have access to applications until that third-ish week of June. And then AMCAS says, okay, come get your applications. And then that's when you'll start to see secondaries come out. And I think the biggest thing to remember, there are schools, once that trigger that third week of June, where schools can start accessing applications. If you submit your application and it is unverified by that time, you might still get secondary applications from schools, even if you're not verified. And I think that's just a little bit of nuance that catches students off guard sometimes. They'll think, oh, I submitted a little bit later, I'm not going to get any secondaries until I'm verified. There is a flag in the AMCAS system for a school to say, I want to know who's applying to my school even before they're verified, so that I can start sending secondaries. That's just a school by school preference, though. So hopefully that helps. Fola D. So many things, just lots of dates and thoughts and all that stuff. All right. Rekha, you mentioned about community service. Are kids expected to have clinical volunteering too? I'm assuming as opposed to paid clinical. So in general, either is fine, as long as they have clinical. Can you get secondaries before submitting your MCAT? Absolutely. If an applicant is a Texas resident working full-time in Texas after undergrad there, but also would qualify for in-state status in home state as dependent of an out-of-state parent, can TMDSAS and MCAS residency differ? Scott, I'm going to throw this one to you too because of the TMDSAS aspect. If an applicant is a Texas resident working full-time in Texas after undergrad, that typically is a residency defining act, right?
Correct.
But they're dependent on, from a tax perspective. What are your thoughts there?
They're going to be based. My understanding is that their residency is going to be based on their parent. If they're a dependent, then their residency is going to be based on their parent.
Yeah, I don't understand how they can be a dependent anymore, though, if they're working. I don't know.
Isn't it an age thing?
It's 20,
even if you were
26, whatever.
26 or something like that.
I always defer to state law, like whatever the law says you're a resident of. Right? You're not if you're not in school anymore. I don't know. I know there are individual schools that will say, hey, you went to high school here, your parents are here. We as a school will consider you in-state. But from an application service standpoint,
right.
Go ask the application service, my friend.
They're dependent totally on what the state, law says.
Yeah.
And the problem with the state law, I know this is going to be a huge surprise to everyone in this country, is that in the United States, as in most countries, laws are not always logical.
Yep.
One law says this and the other law says that, may conflict, and there's all kinds of different nuances and stuff. So
yep,
it's a very complicated process.
Yep.
So, but I think theoretically it is possible to be a resident of two different states.
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah.
Because if you met state law for state A and that said, here's what we categorize you as a state resident if you meet all these requirements, and state B has different requirements and you met all those, then you could ostensibly be a resident of both states based on what their law stipulates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ask around. It's one of the most frustrating rules. Here they gave us the rule: 24 years old, IRS rules 50% of cost of living paid by parent is defined as a dependent. Yeah, but it would be interesting because verified qualify for residency under Texas and home state's rule, but would AMCAS and TMDSAS have an issue? They don't talk to each other. So on TMDSAS, put Texas. On AMCAS, put the other one.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. They've done their homework already, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte, I'm taking the MCAT May 23rd. Do you recommend that I submit my applications before I take the exam if they are open for submission? AMCAS wouldn't be likely, or should I wait until I get my score back? Carlos, this is kind of the game, right? If you think about May 23rd, just a month out from that is June 23rd. That's still in that June timeframe of when we say ideally submit your application. It's almost just a kind of an anxiety test of like, do you want to wait? It's fine. Are you stressed about submitting? Go ahead and do that too.
Yeah. It's just going to depend on if you feel comfortable submitting without the MCAT and then making a decision to be like, no, never mind, I'm not going to proceed, or whether you just rather wait until you get your MCAT score and then hit the submit button for verification. At the end of the day, I don't think schools have received any of the data at this point. And even after you get your score, I'm looking at it but you would receive your score June 24th. I think schools don't get the data until June 28th. So you still have a couple, about a week for you to make that decision. But that's left up to you. If you're banking again, right? If you're like, no, I'm going to wait. If you're like, no, I'm going to submit. Then submit.
Yeah. Are preview and Casper necessary for an application if I'm not applying to schools that need them? Nope. Look at your school list. JS, hi there. Is working at a nursing home as an activity coordinator like games considered as clinical or non-clinical volunteering? Thank you. Scott, we get this question a lot, this specific type of question, because nursing homes are very popular places to go hang out as a pre-med student or pre-health student. They did a good job here of telling us exactly what they're doing, right? A games kind of coordinator. Non-clinical? Clinical?
I would say non-clinical, but different people could argue different ways on this one. You know, this is in the gray zone, I think.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you're coordinating the game, but then during the game, are you walking around making sure that people are
doesn't fall
eating?
Down.
Yes,
exactly.
So there's some nuance, but in general, probably not, unless you make a strong argument for it.
Right. That's right.
H neuro. I have a 3.78 cumulative and science GPA with only one standout poor grade, which I retook and got an A. Will this initial grade or GPA be an issue for AdComs? Should I take post-bac courses? I'm an international applicant. 3.78, great GPA. No concerns there. There was another international student. Let me see if I can find that one again. There's, I think, an assumption that because international students, they just have so few spots, that you just have to be an amazing applicant. So here, this one, Barbara. I'm an international student. I took the MCAT twice with a second attempt being a 5.15. Should I retake it a third time or will it look bad? And a 5.15 is a fantastic score. I wouldn't retake it.
No, I wouldn't either.
And unfortunately, we don't have good data that says international students, this is kind of the requirement stat-wise that we need. So,
but it almost shouldn't matter, right? All applicants should be looked at the same, I think. You know, if you do
think,
what
yes, yeah, and some schools will do that, right. But some schools may hold international applicants to a higher standard. It's just going to depend. Where was our husband-wife? Jean St. Pierre, when is Application Academy taking new students? Next week. Our new class is starting, our new cohort. You can go to applicationacademy.com now. More specifically, is one-on-one advising also included? Nope. Application Academy is strictly group advising. I think it's fantastic. You get access to all of us, all of the advisors at Medical School HQ. It's just in a group setting, but it works for a lot of people. Where is the husband-wife friend? Where did it go? Where did it go? Husband-wife comment. What's so funny?
Some of the questions I was looking at.
Non-clinical, mixed feelings, community college, Texas, homeless shelter. Here we go. Nitish. Myself and my wife are planning on applying next cycle, 2026, together. How does medical school look at this? Is this a red flag since we are going to be in the same class? I may be overthinking. Yeah, unlike the residency application where the algorithm kind of tries to put you together, but like the residency application, that you are applying completely separate, right? You are not applying with your spouse. You are applying and she is applying. And there's no there's no communication other than that. You can communicate as much as you want to the schools, as much as they will allow. But I think what you do, and we actually, I think just yesterday, actually, one of the students that Dina was working with, we've had, I think, 2 husband-wife applicants this year that we've been working with, and both of them have gotten into the same school together, with the second one letting us know yesterday that they got into the same school. Overthinking. Just apply to the same schools that you want to go to, or schools in similar cities, right? So that's one way of potentially looking at it, is location wise, right? New York City, you have lots of schools in the city itself where you two can live together, but you go off to your separate schools. There are lots of ways to look at this, but the med schools themselves, they're going to look at your application alone. I often tell this story. There was a husband-wife couple that I worked with many years ago when I was still doing the advising by myself, before I knew the joy of having company like Carlos and Scott here. There was a wife that got into a school that the husband was rejected from, and he sent an email. He sent a letter, like a overnight FedEx certified letter, basically saying, hey, I would love a second chance if you would take a look at my application. My spouse was just accepted. Here's why I think I'm a good fit here. They reviewed his application. They invited him for an interview and ultimately accepted him. And it was awesome. So he got a second chance because he advocated for himself. And I use that story all the time when talking about advocating for yourself. I think there are right times to do something like that, and other times just don't bother. But yeah. Pixie, my daughter is a second year in college. She's having a hard time getting into pre-med classes. Thoughts on taking physics during the summer at a community college? Do schools look down on this? Yeah. Scott, you're shaking your head yes. I would love to hear your thought on this.
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that it's always, in my view, questionable when you do not take a prerequisite course at your home institution. So why are you not taking these important prerequisite classes at your home institution?
Because you're having a hard time getting those courses.
Okay. Then the second question is, why are you going to a open enrollment school to do that? Community colleges are open enrollment. You can walk off the street and take a class. There's no other standard beyond that. And so that the thought is, now I'm not saying reality, I'm saying the perception is
potentially
potentially is that means that the level of education in that classroom may be different. Whether it is or not is debatable.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Carlos,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
The only question I would have is like, what is meant by having a hard time getting, like, are they full? Right. Is this person just not planning ahead to say, like, I'm registering for my semester on the first day to guarantee that I get a seat in the class? Like, it's having a hard getting them into. Is it? I'm trying to determine what.
So some of these big campuses, man, it's a brawl to get courses that you need in the right sequence, in the right semester. It's hard. I will give kind of an opposite point of view. Yeah, Scott, I hear you, right? There's a potential that this is like, why are you doing this? I'm gonna value this less. I think big picture, that is much less a concern these days, and especially if it's just one class. There are a million reasons why someone's going to go off and take a class at community college for the summer. But yes, right, potentially, can you do it during the summer at a 4-year institution? Maybe that is a better option. In general, right, my general hesitation for classes during the summer, prereqs during the summer, is not it's going to look bad to med schools, but it's a harder class because it's an accelerated timeline.
Yes, 100%.
So that in general is my hesitation of like, you better be prepared because it's going to be faster.
Especially with a class like physics. Good grief.
Yeah, like that force equals mass times acceleration. Ooh. Or what?
I mean, man.
F equals ma, isn't that the right equation? So that would be my bigger concern. And number two is, will your undergrad accept that as a transfer credit for your major? So that's something else to think about too.
Question. That's right.
So lots of nuances there. Yes, it potentially can look bad to people that still have this bias against community colleges. Yes, it is a faster sequence because it's a shorter time period. Is it accepted? But if it's one data point and you're confident the student can do well, and that's just what you need to do to keep moving versus like an extra year of college.
Yeah, it's all about unacceptable, acceptable, optimal.
Yeah.
Right view.
Yep. Yeah.
I would also say, because I used to work on the other side, not the admission side, but sometimes they would make exceptions, right? This class is full, and then you would have to go through this process to be allowed to register for a class that was already full, because they assume that there would be attrition through the semester, right? So eventually it would even out, but you have to ask. It's not just something that's published. Like, yeah, you can sign up, you just have to go through this process. So that's another option.
Yep. Yeah. Matt, great question. Do you have, or will you have, residency consulting services soon? Carlos, you want to talk about what we're working on?
Yeah, I think we are gearing up, hopefully here in the next couple of months, to really begin the residency process, or helping medical students with the residency application, interviews, personal statement, sort of deciding what programs to apply. So be on the lookout for more information as we gear up to offer those services. Should be fun.
That's the world you came from. You are a former director of admissions on the admissions side, but where we were able to steal you from is director of affairs at Icon, and you kind of dealt with this, right? Students kind of stressing over residency applications and helping them through the process.
Yes, and actually today is the deadline if you're working on rank order list for this cycle for the match. Deadline is, I believe, 9 p.m. Eastern time. So if you are a medical student working on the rank order, certify your list, because if not, your changes will not be saved.
Any last minute tips for the rank order list?
Rank them. Rank all the programs that you interviewed at. Rank them from I like the most to the least. Remember that you applied and interviewed at programs that you would be okay training for the next 3 to 7 years. So rank them all. Don't leave any out. just because you never know what the rank order algorithm is going to do for you.
The magic of the algorithm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So fun stuff. But do it tonight. Do it before tonight.
Yeah, and for those who aren't at that residency point yet, so the rank order list, the schools that you've or the programs that you've interviewed at, I got to work on switching up my language. The programs that you've interviewed at, you rank them literally, like this program number 1, this program number 2, this program number 3, and you just go down your list and you submit that, and then the programs on their end are basically doing the same thing. This student number 1, this student number 2. And then the algorithm does its thing. It's a very interesting process. If you're interested in learning kind of the history of the algorithm, the sodium sheriff, what's his Brian Canna, what's his name? The sheriff of sodium is his website, thesheriffofsodium.com. He's got tons of great in-depth videos on medical education. I've had him on the podcast before. Carmody, I think is his name, Dr. Carmody. He's a nephrologist, so he loves the sodium. But yeah, the rank order list is fun. I remember my rank order list. Do you want to hear my rank order list? Was Shattuck, which was a Tufts program in Boston, and then no match. I couples matched with my spouse, and so her rank order list was the MGH neurology program. She wanted to go to MGH. That was her dream, for spots 1 and 2. And then that way, if I got my spot at the hospital that I interviewed at, and she got her spot, she would match. If I didn't get my spot, but she got her spot, I sacrificed myself and I would have gone unmatched so that she would have gone into her neuro program. And then I would have what they called at the time scrambled into a prelim year. So we both matched.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they call it SOAP now. It was scramble then. All right, friends, we are at the top of the hour. medicalschoolhq.net. Use the promo code PMOH to save a little bit of money. Essay season right now. Come work with us with your personal statements, activity descriptions, secondary essays. Interview prep is huge, or we can help you throughout the whole application process and partner with you through that. medicalschoolhq.net. Carlos, Reverend Dr. James Scott Wright. See you later. Bye-bye.